Hello, welcome to Touring History, the podcast where we pretend we're qualified to talk about the past. My name's Lane.
And I'm not qualified to do anything because I'm Dave. And before we dive into today's cavalcade of historical chaos, we need to thank our sponsor, Randy's Donuts. You know, Randy's has been the world famous icon since 1952.
Which, fun fact, is actually one of our stories today.
Yeah, and that giant donut on the roof in Inglewood has become one of LA's most iconic landmarks. I mean, when Iron Man sits inside your donut sign to eat actual donuts, you know you've made it. When you're dealing with the kind of historical disasters we're about to discuss, you need donuts from a place that survived Hollywood and still makes them fresh.
Speaking of substance, Dave, it's June 14th, which means we have birthdays, flag controversies, space monkeys, and, oh God, we're doing the asteroid story again, aren't we?
Oh, I love a good space monkey story, Lane. Yes, and we're absolutely doing the asteroid story. But first,
Birthdays! Starting
yes,
with Marla Gibbs, who's 94 today. You know her from The Jeffersons. But here's the thing that gets me she didn't even start acting professionally until she was in her 40s.
get out of town. That's actually fascinating because it connects to this whole pattern I've noticed about people who,
Dave,
yes,
we have Boy George turning 64, Lucy Hale at 36, Jesse Nelson at 34, and Kevin McHale at 37. Can we just acknowledge that Boy George is 64? Like, that's a sentence that exists now.
yeah. And you know what his real name is? George O'Dowd. But you know
Oh,
what's
didn't know.
weird? All
No,
these
what?
people, different generations, but they all had to navigate fame in completely different mediascapes. But they all had to but they all had to navigate fame in completely different media landscapes. Marla Gibbs, for example, dealt with 3 networks, and that was it. Oh, remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
Boy George had MTV. Lucy Hale had social media from day one.
And Kevin McHale went from Glee to, well, that's a whole other conversation about how show business chews people up. But
Yeah.
speaking of things that endure, Dave, let's talk about flags.
Flags? I love flags. They wave, they never let you down until they're coming down. I mean, they're just always there. That's right. June 14th, 1775, the Continental Congress established the Continental Army. It was very continental. And I have to ask, was this the most optimistic military decision in history? You bet.
Oh, here we go. Dave's got opinions about 18th century military strategy.
Well, I mean, come on. When you're up against the British Empire and you decide to, okay, we're going to fight you. I know we have an ocean between us, but we're going to win, okay? No, but think about it, Lane. They're like, we're going to fight the most powerful military in the world with farmers. Now, I'm not knocking farmers out there. You know what I mean? You know, you drive the giant combines, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what that's like. And
Uh,
maybe some of them have guns.
yeah, and to be fair, it worked out eventually after a lot of people died and France bailed us out.
Yeah, good old France coming to the rescue. Excuse me, would you like our help and maybe some crepes?
I like the crabs. I cannot say
Yes,
no to the crabs.
the Suzette, they're everything. Which brings us to 2 years later.
That's right, June 14th, 1777, Congress approves the Stars and Stripes flag design. And Dave, this is where your flag obsession really kicks in, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, Lane. I mean, I could talk about flags all day long. But I digress. Look, I'm not obsessed with flags. I just think it's fascinating that they spent time during a war to argue about fabric arrangements. I mean, that's when you, damn it, know you're going to win. People are dying and they're like, but it should be 13 stripes or 15. I'm not quite sure.
Well, they needed something to rally around besides not being British, which, let's be honest, is still pretty much our entire national identity.
That's true. We're not like you. No. Fast forward to 1934, and Pennsylvania celebrates the first official Flag Day. Well, it took them a while, didn't it? Which feels
Hmm.
very Pennsylvania, taking something that already existed and making it official through bureaucracy. They did that with 3 Mile Island, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's Jump ahead to 1919, because this is where things get genuinely insane. Alcock and Brown begin the first nonstop transatlantic flight in what was basically a flying coffin with wings.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what's insane. The duo's
Getting through that
name.
last line. That's what was insane.
Yeah, can you imagine those two? Of course, they're in a flying coffin with wings. I think we should change our names before we go, or maybe I'll be first, Brown and Alcock. No, that doesn't work either. You know what reminds me of a story? You're having an existential crisis about your own name.
What? I don't know where we are. That was my line, I think.
That reminds me of a story. Dave. Wait, I'm Dave.
Oh, are you having an existential crisis about your own name?
No, 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 no. I was going to tell you about my great uncle who was convinced he could build a plane in his barn, or maybe it was a barn in his plane. I don't know. And it was 1923. Now, the barn is still there. The plane, well, yeah, there are pieces of it embedded in the oak tree out back. I think he got a little frustrated.
That's somehow both touching and terrifying. Unlike Alcock and Brown, who actually made it across the Atlantic, which in 1919 was basically magic.
Yeah. How come we never heard about them and only Lindbergh?
Yeah. I've never heard of Alcock and Brown before
Yeah,
today.
because it's like, let's not tell anybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a big fuss about this.
Who knew about them? I didn't.
No.
We learn something new every day in history, Dave.
That's right. That's why you're tuned into touring history.
Let's go on to 1940, shall we?
June 14th, 1940, German troops entered Paris, and the first prisoners are deported to Auschwitz.
This is
Oh,
one of
that's
those
a
days
depressing
where
note.
I know, right? This is one of those days where history just it's a lot. We're not going to make jokes about this one, folks.
Nah, we're going to let this one alone. Yeah, some things just deserve respect and remembrance, not comedy. So, moving forward.
All right, let's move on to 1949. And we launched a monkey into space, Dave. We're at your Space Monkey Special. Albert II, specifically, who became the first mammal to reach space and return alive.
That's right. We're not talking about whales here, but space monkeys. Okay, but can we talk about the fact that Albert II, or Albert II, implies that there was Albert the First?
There was. Albert the I died in the attempt, as did
Oh,
Alberts 3 and 4. This was not a great gig for monkeys named Albert.
yeah. Can you imagine the guy number 5? Hey, listen, dudes, can we change my name to Gus? I'm starting to see a pattern here with human decision-making, Lane. The first 4 Alberts died horribly, but Albert V might be different, right?
Yeah, I hope so, for Albert's sake. Speaking of questionable human decisions,
June 14th, 1950. An Air France DC-4 crashes near Bahrain, killing all 40 people aboard. This was back when flying was still, well, legitimately dangerous, not just annoying.
yeah, my grandmother refused to fly until 1987 because of crashes just like this. She said if God wanted us in the air, he'd have given us wings. I told her, we invented wings. And she said, exactly, we stole them.
Oh, Granny. She was so prophetic. And maybe a little pathetic, too. I'm not going up in that thing. Not until I grow wings. But here's where things get interesting again. 1951. UNIVAC, the first commercial electronic computer, is unveiled. This massive room-sized machine that could do calculations was just enormous. It wasn't enormous. It was ginormous.
Yeah, and now we carry computers in our pockets that are millions of times more powerful, which we use primarily to look at pictures of food and argue with strangers.
Yeah, can you imagine some guy in the back room in 1951 sort of mumbling to himself, a real total nerd?
In another 90 years, this will be the size of my palm.
Oh, shut up, Albert! The UNIVAC weighed 29,000 pounds. Your phone weighs 6 ounces and can do things that would have seemed like literal magic to those engineers.
I'm telling you, it's going to be really small.
Albert, get the out of here!
I swear, no, I think we have a new guest named Albert. we're gonna revisit that voice. I think
Get your monkey ass back in that capsule.
Oh, I don't know. I really like it. Oh my god. Although to be fair, those engineers probably imagined we'd use this incredible technology for something more productive than rating donuts on the internet. Oh, which
Well,
reminds me.
what's more productive than that? Nothing.
Yeah. Time to recharge, and we'll be back
Yes.
soon.
All right.
Because first we need to talk about Randy's Donuts again, because unlike historical disasters, Randy's has been consistently delivering since 1952.
That's right, Lane. It would be a disaster if we didn't talk about
That's
Randy's
right.
Donuts. You know what I love about Randy's?
No, what, Dave?
Well, I'll tell you. In all the chaos we've been discussing, wars, crashes, space monkeys named Albert, there's something deeply comforting about knowing that somewhere in Inglewood there's a giant donut on a roof that's about to become one of LA's most famous landmarks. And inside, people are making legitimately great donuts. Not inside the donut on the roof, but, down in the building.
In the donut shop. And they've expanded way beyond that original location. You can get Randy's in Vegas, Phoenix, even South Korea and Japan. But that original giant donut sign, still there, still iconic, still probably visible from space.
Don't. I wonder if Albert saw it when he was
I
flying.
know. Banana donut.
Randy. When you're contemplating the absurdity of human history, sometimes you just need a donut. From a place that's been featured in more movies than most actors. Check them out at randysdonuts.com. And now back to the historical chaos.
Yes, welcome to 1954, when Under God gets added to the Pledge of Allegiance, because apparently the original pledge wasn't controversial enough.
Yes, this was the same time that the Department of War became the Department of Defense. 1954, Under God gets added to the Pledge of Allegiance. Oops, sorry. This was peak Cold War paranoia, ladies and gentlemen. How can we prove we're not communists? All 57 of you. More God and government pledges, damn it.
Written by a socialist and modified by Cold War conservatives to fight socialism. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a flag.
There we go. Flags. You know I love them, Lane. Francis Bellamy. The
You're a
commie
huge
who wrote
flag.
the original pledge was probably rolling in his grave, although he died in 1931, so he missed the whole Under God drama.
He did. Lucky him. Moving on to 1972. The EPA bans domestic DDT use, finally admitting that maybe the chemical that was making bird eggshells paper thin wasn't so great for the environment.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember running around as a kid and the DDT truck would come by the neighborhood to get rid of the mosquitoes. And you know what? We'd just chase it down the street as that fog spewed out the back. Yay!
Yay! This is so
No bugs
fun.
on me! Oh my God, my arm fell off. Mommy! You know what's fascinating about this? It took Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 to start the conversation, but 10 years to actually do something about it. There's progress for you.
Well, that's actually a pretty fast response time for government action on environmental issues. By modern standards, it's lightning speed.
Well, I don't know. Doge did all that stuff in a matter of days.
Oh, fair point, I suppose.
Yeah, fair point. But today it would take 30 years and 3 congressional investigations just to admit DDT might be problematic. But not in this administration, I'm telling you.
That's right. That's right. And finally, on 1982, the Falklands War ends as Argentine forces surrender. A war that lasted 74 days over islands most people couldn't find on a map.
Las Malvinas. That's what they were in Argentina, my friends. Margaret Thatcher's approval ratings went from terrible to excellent because of this war. There's nothing like a good war to get the numbers up. There's something deeply British about fighting a war 8,000 miles away over sheep farming all over the place. Yeah, let's go down there and blast them to smithereens. They won't know what hit them.
Although, to be fair to both sides, strategic islands in the South Atlantic aren't nothing. But yeah, it was a very 1980s conflict. High stakes, questionable motivations, and Everyone involved acting like it was the most important thing ever.
Yeah, you gotta wonder, Lane, why it took them 74 days to conquer that little place.
I know what's going on. And you know what? I said that was finally, like it was our last story, but I don't think that's true. I think you still have one left, Dave.
That's right. Just a little, rug pull there. But let's end with 2002, because this is my favorite. Humanity almost died and nobody noticed story. Asteroid 2002 MN. I wonder who thought of that one. Missed
Mm.
Earth by about 75,000 miles. Now, it doesn't sound like much, folks. But when, the solar system is about 5 million times bigger than that, it's pretty close. It's like a grazing when you're making a walk across the street and some bicyclist comes in your way. Oops! Sorry.
Yeah. If that asteroid had hit Earth, we wouldn't be here talking about flag controversies and space monkeys. We'd be dead. Because the thing is, we only discovered it 3 days after it passed by. So we came close to extinction and didn't even know it until after the fact.
Yeah, if that asteroid had hit if that asteroid had hit the Earth, we wouldn't be talking about flag controversies and space monkeys. We'd be dead. Did we already do that? That's very human, isn't it? Huh. Oh, and by the way, we almost all died on Tuesday. Yeah. Anyway, here's what happened on Wednesday.
So that's June 14th. Flags, space monkeys, near death asteroids, and the eternal human capacity to make questionable decisions and somehow survive them.
Get out of here, Albert. If there's a theme here, it's that humans are remarkably good at creating problems and monkeys shouldn't fly. Then eventually, sometimes, they should. After about 4 tries. or at least surviving them through sheer dumb luck.
Thanks again to Randy's Donuts for sponsoring today's episode. When the next asteroid comes, at least we'll have good donuts to eat while we contemplate our mortality.
That's right. Why don't you keep a box handy just in case? Visit randysdonuts.com and remember, history is just a series of, well, seemed like a good idea at the time, decisions that somehow led us talking into microphones about the past.
That's right, and I'm Lane.
And I love flags. And I'm Dave.
And we'll see you next time on Touring History,
where we make the past sound slightly less boring than it actually was. Take that.
Probably. We'll try. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.